Welcome, welcome. Again, I'm Dr. Emily from the Joy of Coding Academy, and we are so excited to have you guys live today inside the Facebook group. So my apologies, there's a little bit of a delay. We had an open projects Q&A session just before, and it ran a little bit long, which I was super excited about. The students are asking awesome questions. And if you ever want like guided support on your journey learning how to code, definitely reach out. Let me know. The team will get back to you. We can totally get you started inside the Joy of Coding Academy if that's something that would interest you. The Joy of Coding Academy, we work with students from beginning to jobs and getting that first offer. And so far we have a 100% job placement rate, and we also offer a money back guarantee if you don't get it. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Today, what we're talking about, super excited. We are talking about how beginning coders can use ChatGPT in their learning. Actually, not just how can they, but how should they, right? And I really want to hear, like, if anyone's watching this, give me a shout out, guys. If you're watching this and you're thinking about using ChatGPT as you learn to code, or you have been, I totally want to hear what you're thinking, because I have seen some really different, areas of responses, right? Like some people are like, oh, ChatGPT is cheating, right? Like you're shortcutting your learning. And others are like, oh, I just did this really cool thing with ChatGPT and it totally helped me get there faster. Like it totally increased my efficiency as a developer. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be diving into the role of AI and ChatGPT on software development and how you can use it to really up-level your game to learn how to code. So let's start there today. So we're talking about how can beginning coders use ChatGPT? Right? So how can beginning coders, I'm probably gonna end up saying can, but really it is about should. It's really about should, but I'm gonna be probably saying a lot of can. So here, we'll make sure that shows up loud and clear. All right, so how should beginning coders use ChatGPT in their learning? And if you're here in the Facebook Live, let me know, drop a comment in the chat. I can't wait to see it. All right, so there's a couple key steps to learning to become a software developer, right? And one of the first places we start is with the basics. And I call this the 7 basics, right? So we've got the 7 basics. All right. And what I'm going to do today is I actually want to demo some of these things so you guys can see it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to write out the ways you can use it. And then I'm going to show you, because I have to bop into the screen sharing and that's kind of clunky. So all I'll do is break it down for you guys, and then we'll demo some of these ideas. So when you're still learning the basics, this is where I see people, getting concerned that they're cheating, right? Okay, ChatGPT, write me a program that takes the average of a list of numbers, right? So while that's good, ChatGPT can give you the answer. The problem is you have missed out on the opportunity to build your problem-solving muscle and actually solve that problem yourself, right? So we don't really want to use ChatGPT to solve simple problems. So we want to avoid solving simple problems, right? So we want to avoid ChatGPT solving simple problems for us, right? Because this is where we start. Like, for example, let me give you an example. When we're learning to write for the first time, we might say something like, the dog is red. The dog might not be red, but the dog is red. That's a really simple sentence. Might someone have said that sentence before? Yes. ChatGPT can write that sentence too. But the practice of writing that sentence is teaching us, like the value of writing a sentence that has been written before is that it teaches us how to compose a sentence. Same here. When we have really simple coding problems, we do not want to give those to ChatGPT to solve for us, because we lose the learning opportunity to learn how to build our own problem-solving muscles of how we can sit down and actually solve this problem. So we always want, when we're given problems to write and implement, we want to code them, right? In the beginning, we don't want to use ChatGPT for that. I'm not saying never. I'm just saying in the beginning, right? And that is when people say like, oh, that's laziness. It's not lazy, but it's suboptimal for our learning, because if you already know, it's kind of funny, if you already know how to do it yourself, you could have ChatGPT do it for you. let me give you an example of this. Like why, if you already know how to do it, why would you have ChatGPT do it? And we're going to showcase this later on. One of our senior devs is going to show, with 30 years experience, going to show you how he uses ChatGPT. So cool. So the idea is when you already know how to do it, let's say like, one of my favorite languages on the planet is Perl. Maybe I already know how to, and very few people use this language, right? Yes, Katrina, speed, exactly, right? So okay, I already know how to write it. I'm going to write it in Perl, but maybe there's a new language. Maybe it's like, oh, well, how would I write that in React.js? Okay, I already know how to do it. So I can recognize the correct answer when ChatGPT gives it to me. Because ChatGPT, hate to tell you guys, is not always correct, right? But it's very confident. It is like the perfect teacher that doesn't knows like 80%, right? Right? So it's faster, right? It's going to help us speed up, expedite our process. But we don't want to actually ask ChatGPT to write things that we couldn't write ourselves or that we're not ready to debug and work on ourselves, right? So when you're at the basics level, like when you're more advancing, yeah, use ChatGPT to generate stuff so you can learn and evolve more quickly. And I'll show you how to do that, actually. I'll make sure that we have that. So coding templates for sure. That's what we're really working on as we advance. Super cool. And so I'll tell you about that in a minute. But when we're dealing with the 7 basics, like when you are still figuring out how for loops work, you're not asking ChatGPT to generate the code for you, right? How can you use ChatGPT though when you are working in the 7 basics? Yes, I love that, Katrina. ChatGPT is the Google Translate of code. Yes, love it for the win. Okay, we are not using ChatGPT to write for us. Right? We are not asking ChatGPT to write for us when we're in the 7 basics, right? Loops, functions, strings, lists, ints, floats. If you don't recognize any of those words, do not ask ChatGPT to write the code for you. Now, remember, I'm training people to become 6-figure software developers. If you just want to be able to copy and paste code to make a Chrome extension or a WordPress extension work, okay, be my guest and use ChatGPT to write the code for you. But if you want to become that highly paid 6-figure software developer who's capable of earning not just 6 figures, but more than 6 figures, you need to get these, right? Like, so there's a difference, right? There's context involved. It's not like never use ChatGPT for thing X, right? To solve your problems, but when to use ChatGPT to solve those problems. Okay. So if you're a beginner, if you're in beginner land, you're learning the 7 basics, how can you use ChatGPT to generate reading practice templates? Okay, what does that look like? Okay, what does that look like? I'm going to show you an example in a little bit, but the idea is when you're learning the 7 basics, how do you know that you've mastered them? How do you know that you're ready for that next level? Well, you can take a piece of code and predict what it will output before the computer does, right? Before you run it on the computer. And then when you run your code, you can see where you were correct and not. And the cool thing is that you can generate with ChatGPT, you can create infinitely many examples to test your knowledge and make sure that you've got it down. So this, I've been teaching these basics to anyone who wants to learn how to code as a professor of computer science for over 10 years. Like I've been doing this a really long time. And I can tell you with confidence, because I've seen it day in and day out, student from student, regardless of where their interests lie. If they're art students, music students, history students, physics students, math students, doesn't matter. If you can predict correctly the output of a piece of code before it is run, you have sufficient mastery of the 7 basics to move on and to start leveling up, right? But if you can't do that, do not move on, because you're just going to be confused and you're going to get yourself in situations where you have bugs that you can't fix and you can't solve because you don't actually understand what's going on. And it's going to be frustrating and it's going to be really demotivating and it's going to be really hard to succeed. So I'm here to help you set up for success. So if you're just starting out, make sure you've got these 7 basics down, right? Step 1. And the way we use ChatGPT for that is we can actually ask ChatGPT to generate things for us, like write a Python program with a for loop, a while loop, and an if statement. And I'll show you that in a little bit, what that can look like. All right, so that's number 1. The other way you can use it as you advance, this idea of coding templates, oh my goodness, right? Like This is really, really cool. So you can also use it to create templates you can adapt. So one of the things that we advocate in the Joy of Coding Academy, like there's a reason why we have a very specific method for how we can help train people become six-figure software developer ready in 6 months. And it's not just like, oh, like you go crazy working 80-hour days and you get there. No, there's a specific method that we use. And so what we do is we actually learn how to recognize and to take a coding template, like a piece of code that's taken out of context from another system and put it into the system we're working in, or better yet, grab a template from the system we're already working on and then use that to solve our problem with the same design as our current system. Super cool, right? It helps us, as a new developer, onboard to a project and make correct changes super fast. So that's the method that we teach. The cool thing is that ChatGPT now became the infinite coding template generator. So not only can you use it to practice your 7 basics, but as you advance, you can also use it to generate templates. Hey, ChatGPT, create a class that's going to track fines for patrons in a library, for example. Or ChatGPT, create a template piece of code that's going to allow the end user to change the hero image in the website we're creating, for example, right? Like, so you can actually use it to give you templates that you can then grab and adapt and put into place in the system you're building. We are nowhere near ChatGPT replacing software developers, right? Because we actually need to know how to do it when ChatGPT doesn't work or when it doesn't integrate perfectly, right? You need someone who can glue pieces in. You don't have to necessarily write everything. So software developers are totally getting more efficient, but we do still need software developers for sure. It's kind of like self-driving cars. Like AI is great, but you need the human behind the wheel to avoid catastrophic failure, like when the car doesn't see the person who's crossing the road in front of them, for example. All right. So ChatGPT just became our infinite coding generator. Super cool, super cool. Awesome. So that's one thing we can use it for. The other thing we can use it for is to explain code. So one of the things I try and teach students is not to try and understand the code until it's working fully, right? So like, let's say you're like, okay, how would I automatically log into a remote server and execute a command? So there's a lot of different ways of doing it. And it might take time to figure out which one like specifically works on your system. So you don't actually want to sit down and understand all the pieces until you actually have it working. You need to understand enough to get it working, to be able to copy and paste in some of the solutions you're seeing. But there's always more than one way to do it. And so the cool thing is that ChatGPT can also be used to explain what a piece of code is doing, right? So that's really cool. So you can also get examples on the internet or even code that's in front of you or in the system you're working on and have it explained to you, like an awesome custom coding tutor. So cool, right? So we can also use it to help us learn after we see it working. After we see it working, for sure. And then there's a really cool acronym I want to share here with you guys. It's called Tim Toady. There is more than one way to do it, right? So this is actually from it's called the Camel book. It's Learning Perl. Haha. Yes, Programming Perl. I get this book taught me how to code right here. You don't have to read it to learn how to code because it's pretty thick. But I spent a summer, I read through this book, like the first 5 or 7 chapters cover to cover. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is how programming works. Like it just made so much sense. So like this is a quote from this book, Tim Toady. There is more than one way to do it because that language Perl was designed around that, but it's true for most languages. There's always more than one way to do it. So you can either ask ChatGPT to tell you what this code is doing. You can also ask it, is there a better way of doing it? And be specific about better, more efficient, more concise, right? So pick the design you're going for, drier, right? Whatever it is you're looking for, put that into ChatGPT. Like, okay, can you give me a more concise way of writing this code? Give me a more efficient way of writing this code. And we'll get into these examples soon. I can't wait to show you guys. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Awesome. I love it. So good, guys. Welcome, Emma. Welcome, Katrina. So good to see you. Excellent. Okay. So there's another way that we can use ChatGPT as we're learning, and it's to prep for interviews. All right. So we can totally prep for interviews with ChatGPT a little bit. All right. So what does that look like? We can ask it to give us specific problems that we want to practice. So there's tons of websites out there that will help you practice. So like LeetCode, HackerRank, right? There's a lot of problems out there that will allow you to practice tech interview style problems. But if you want to practice a specific type of problem, you can just say, hey, give me 10 practice tech interview problems that use stacks, right? To kind of see a couple and to convince yourself that you have them. So it's really just like this kind of lookup right at your fingertips. You can also ask for sample interview questions, right? Things to be prepared for. In fact, I did ask ChatGPT for a list of them, and one of them was asked one of our students on a recent job interview. So that works. It's totally on point. And that's the thing is like, if you kind of know 75%, like ChatGPT can fill in the rest. But if you only know like 25%, like enough to be dangerous, ChatGPT might lead you astray, right? Like you do have to kind of know enough to recognize, is ChatGPT giving you what you're looking for, or is it pulling your leg, right? And then also, ChatGPT can be really transformative in your process for creating new pieces of software. And that's what we're going to talk about next week with Chad Woolley. He's one of our senior software engineers inside the Joy of Coding Academy. He helps train our students and answers questions live on Zoom for students each week. And so he recently used ChatGPT to spin up a new system, and it it totally cut down his development time. I think it went from like 20 or 40 hours to like I can't remember if it was 2 to 8 hours. I know that's a big difference, but I can't remember what he said. But we're going to interview him next week. He's going to do a demo for us and kind of show us how an advanced software engineer uses ChatGPT, but also why ChatGPT isn't replacing software developers anytime soon, right? Anytime soon at all. Cool. Excellent. So this is our list. Let me just summarize. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share. So I'm going to get real small. So I just want to make sure everybody sees this. So when you're in the beginning stages and you're learning the basics, do not use ChatGPT to write your code for you. Only have it generate examples that you're going to read and predict. Okay. Then it can also help you create templates that you can adapt to put into a project, right? So especially if you're updating and maintaining a project or creating one new, super powerful as you advance. You can also have it explain to you or help you improve your code, right? After it's already working, you can have it, make it more concise or efficient. You can also have it explain to you what it's doing. Like if you got the code working, but you have no idea why, right? That would be a great time for this. And also to help you prepare for interviews. So let me screen share so you guys can see this. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Happy to answer. Let me know in the chat. So I'm going to do a quick screen share here so you guys can see. All right, cool. So this is an example. If you're learning the basics, how can you use ChatGPT to help? So you can write a Python program with a for loop, while loop, and if statement, right? So I listed out a couple of the 7 basics, and I wanted ChatGPT to give me a sample program. Okay. So here it created a program. It also included lists. And to be honest, this looks a lot like the type of program I might give my students, or like I might generate myself in a classroom environment. So I generated this, and now what we can do is I can sit down and try and predict what it'll output, right? That's the next step. And then I might even be able to print it out. Now, don't look, it already gave me an explanation of this program of what it does, right? Which is great. Don't look at it till after, right? We want to make sure we've got it right. And then you can run the code, right? You can simply run the code and see the result. And you can generate infinitely many examples. You'd be like, hey, generate 10. Give me 10 examples that use variables and floats, or give me 10 that print out, ifs, or have nested if else's, or have nested elifs, right? Like you can say whatever the thing is that you want to make sure you understand, you can have ChatGPT generate a program for you. And that's going to be super helpful for your learning. So we want to look for ways that ChatGPT is going to enhance our experience and help in our abilities, rather than, right, like replacing them so we don't actually do the learning, right? Like, and if you don't want to do the learning, that's cool. But we're here because we want to become 6-figure software developers, right? So In that case, we want to have these 7 basics down. So next up, we talked about, here, let me go up to the top here. Next up, we talked about, okay, like here's an example template that I use all the time for, with new students to take the average of a list of numbers in Python. It's not super efficient. It's not the fastest or most concise way of doing it, but it's really clear with the 7 basics, like exactly what's happening. And so here is an example where we can also ask ChatGPT to help us improve our code. So the cool thing is like, okay, let's just get it working once. Great, it works. Can we do it better? How can we do it better? And here's the thing. If you constantly ask ChatGPT how you can make it better and you remember it, you will slowly become an amazing program, right? So this is super cool. So I asked it, show me another way to calculate the average of a list of numbers in Python. This helps me learn more rapidly, right? It goes back to this idea of Tim Toady. There's more than one way of doing it. So here's an alternative way to calculate the average of a list of numbers. Okay, cool. So it uses the sum and length functions. Well, that's a lot more concise than this. Cool. Those functions, sum and length, might not be available in other languages. Length is, but sum isn't always, right? In that way. We have to use it differently, like in Java and things, and C and C, things like that. So it can be language specific. So this is another way that ChatGPT can help us. It's always been the case that the essential fundamental principles in programming have been the same for 50 years. They're the same across all languages. They look a little different, but most languages have them. This is a way where you can start getting at the idiosyncrasies of a language. Like in Python, someone will have, this is the Pythonic way of doing it. Like, how do people do this in Python? What's the idiom in this language for solving this task, right? So I gave an example template. Sum equals count, sum equals 0, count equals 0, for each number in this range, add it, count it. Oh, I think actually I think I'm missing a tab over here, right? So that should be indented, but ChatGPT still figured it out. But the idea is that every coding language is going to have a different, idiomatic way of doing that. And so you can now start to ask for those things, right? If you know, like you need to know enough in one language that you could do it yourself so you can recognize success. But you can just say, hey, how can I rewrite this in JavaScript, right? And then it would give you the JavaScript way of doing it, which is super cool. It's super powerful, right? You can take these little elements and use it to kind of help you leap forward and jump ahead a little bit. And it even offers explanations, right, for this code. In this approach, we use the sum function to calculate the sum of all numbers in the list, then we divide it, right? How cool is that? Excellent. And I think I did it. So that was what's another way? You can also say, what's a more efficient way, right? And so, okay, they made a more efficient way. They separated out in variables, but it's the same thing, right? It's more efficient. It takes less line of code. It's a little bit faster. And then I said, okay, is there a more concise way? Sure. And again, it was going, so here we've got sum, and this is, got a list comprehension in it, right? Like there's a couple different ways, and these are all different. They all look different. I think I personally prefer this way. I think this is unnecessarily verbose. And the reason why I can say that is because I can see this says var for var in numbers, and this just says some numbers. So it is good to kind of keep asking ChatGPT because, right, there's an element of randomness to this. And I asked it for, oddly enough, I asked it for a concise way, and this is less concise, right? There is a more concise way that the ChatGPT just found for me that they didn't use here. So just grain of salt, right? Be attentive, right? And think about it. And then I also give me an example tech interview question using stacks, right? So, okay, I want to practice stacks. And then I'm sure it'll give you the solution. I didn't ask for it. Now give me the solution. Let's just see how that works while I read it. So now give me the solution. Let's see what happens. All right, so here's an example of a tech interview question related to stacks. Question, implement a stack data structure in your preferred coding language, and then design and implement a function that takes a string as input and checks whether the parentheses in the string are balanced or not. This is the problem we actually do inside the Joy of Coding Academy to prepare for the tech interview. The function should return true if the parentheses are balanced or false otherwise. This question assesses your understanding of stacks and your ability to design and implement a function that utilizes a stack to solve a specific problem. So they're even telling you why it's relevant. Okay. Now, ChatGPT is thinking up a solution for me. Here's the deal. Ask ChatGPT for the question, solve it, convince yourself that it's right, then look at the answer. If you do anything other than that, like if you go straight from the question to the answer, you're shooting yourself in the foot because it's never about the answer to the current question in front of you, because you may or may not get that question in a tech interview setting. It's all about, what do I need to know? How do I need to adapt and update my process to solve the next question that I've never seen before, right? That's what we're preparing for, right? It's never about the line of code or the project or the question that's right in front of us. It's about the one we haven't seen yet and that we're preparing for, right? So, okay, so now it's giving me the response, right? Here's a solution. Great. Do not look at that solution until you've implemented it yourself, or you're really shooting your learning in the foot. Okay, so this is where there's like shoulds and should nots, right? Can we do it? Yes. Should we do it? Depends on where we are in our learning process, right? It can be a super powerful tool, but it can also allow us to not grow our ability to problem solve, which is how we get paid the big bucks, right? So that's what we want to invest in, our efficiency as a developer. That's where ChatGPT is helpful. Okay. And then I also asked it, can you show me some sample tech interview questions? And so here's some like, can you explain the principles of solid? That was just asked by a student inside the Joy Coding Academy when they interviewed for a job. Describe the differences between SQL and NoSQL databases. And you can ask it, now show me the solutions, right? You can sit down and work through them all and then see what it says, right? So you can actually generate some of these things. Cool. I love it. Awesome. Awesome. So I know Katrina had asked, she really wanted to see how that worked. Did I answer your question? Do you have other questions? Anybody watching, if you guys have other questions, please let me know. I'll happily fill them in. Let me know what you guys think. But yeah, again, just to summarize, I'm going to stop sharing for a second, just in case there's any questions that people want to ask. But how should beginner coders be using ChatGPT to generate examples to predict and read? Awesome, Katrina. I'm glad that answered your question. So we're looking for, if you're in 7 Basics land, if you don't know how to code yet, if you don't know what a for loop is or how they work or how to write your own functions or what a float or an int are, if you've never heard of those words before, you're in 7 Basics land. You need to master those 7 basics of problem solving in any coding language. I recommend Python, but that's where you want to start. And when you're in that phase, you do not want ChatGPT writing code for you unless it's to check your answers, right? Unless it's to check the work that you've already done. You want to be using ChatGPT though to write code you can read and predict what it outputs to assure yourself that you actually know those 7 basics. Once you're more advanced, you can use ChatGPT to create templates. You can help it explain code after you've done it, or how to make it more concise and improved, right? Like super cool. It can be your right-hand man and helping, like this expert on your shoulder, right? Where you can ask questions. So good. It can also help you prep for interviews, which we also walk through and showcase today. Excellent, guys. Oh, super excited to have you guys here and to talk about this. We are kicking off a series of a couple ChatGPT weeks where we're talking about the role of AI in coding and how it can help us in our learning. And so if you have any other questions, if you're watching this after the live, like please post your comments in the group on the chat. We'll happily get back to them, and keep asking those questions, keep coding. You guys are doing awesome. And if you would like support on your journey to become a software developer, we have a 100% job placement rate inside the Joy Coding Academy. So please reach out and we'll get you rocking and rolling and started right away. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week. Happy coding.